30 bison hides, sewn together with sinew, and -30 outside the wall. This is not a museum reconstruction. This is a dwelling in which children are sleeping right now. I stand before this cone of hides and wood, and inside someone is laughing. It is warm in there, +20, and my teeth, inside my modern down jacket, are chattering so hard I could keep a beat. My name is Nobody. I am simply a person who decided to see how Native Americans built and lived in teepees. A real teepee. Not the kind they sell at festivals for $300 made of synthetic fabric, but the kind that holds heat in the most brutal cold of the Great Plains, has held it for thousands of years. My guide, Shaitan, stands beside me. He is past 50. His face is like a topographic map on which every wrinkle is a separate winter. He looks at me and my shivering with an expression I would call patient compassion. The way one looks at a puppy seeing snow for the first time. We are in South Dakota, January. The wind blows from the northwest, and it does not blow. It cuts. Every gust is an invisible blade that finds every gap between scarf and collar. The plain around us is flat as a table, not a single tree on the horizon. Only a white field and a gray sky, and a thin line between them where one passes into the other. Shaitan says that today we will build a teepee. From scratch. He says it as though he is suggesting we go out for bread. Next to him stands his nephew, Dakota. He is 26. He grew up in the city, came back 3 years ago. Speaks little, does much. His hands in deerskin gloves move with such confidence, as if every finger knows its own schedule precisely. The first thing you need for a teepee is not hides, and not poles. The first thing you need is an understanding of the wind. Shaitan crouches down and looks at the snow. I look too. I see snow. He sees history. By the sastrugi, by the small waves on the surface, by the way snowflakes accumulate near the rare stones, he reads the direction of the prevailing wind. Not today's wind, the constant one, the one that blows here all winter. A teepee is always set up with its entrance facing east. Always. This is not superstition. Wind on the Great Plains in winter blows from the west and northwest. An entrance on the east means the wind strikes the back of the structure rather than rushing inside. This is aerodynamics that they calculated thousands of years before the word was invented. Shaitan stands up and nods. The spot is chosen. Dakota is already dragging the first poles. Poles. This is where everything begins. They are pine. Long, straight, stripped of bark. Each about 5 meters long. Each as thick as my wrist at the base and thinner than a finger at the top. Shaitan says that good poles are half of a good teepee. He selected these trees last spring, cut them, dried them all summer, scraped them in autumn. Half a year of work and these are just sticks. I am beginning to understand the scale. There are 15 of them, 15 perfectly straight poles. I try to lift one. It is light but long and unwieldy. I look like a beetle dragging a straw 10 times its own length. Dakota takes 2 at once, 1 in each hand, and carries them as though they are fishing rods. The first 3 poles, that is the foundation. Shaitan calls them the foundation. He ties them together at the top with a long strap of rawhide. The knot is special, not just a loop. He wraps the strap in a particular way, makes exactly 8 turns, then pulls the end through the middle. I ask why exactly 8. He smiles and says 9 is too many and 7 is too few. Then he adds that 8 turns distribute the load evenly across all 3 poles. This is an engineering calculation packaged in tradition. The 3 bound poles are raised. Shaitan and Dakota do this together, in sync, without a single word. One pushes the bases apart, the other guides the top. 3 seconds, and the skeleton stands. A tripod, the simplest and most stable structure in the world. 3 points of support. No storm will topple a tripod if it is set up correctly. But the tripod is only the beginning. Now the remaining 12 poles are added to it. Each is laid into the fork at the top, each angled outward at its own degree. Shaitan commands with gestures, a finger to the left, Dakota shifts the base of the pole by a hand's width. A nod. Locked in. Next. I count. Fourth pole. Fifth. Sixth. Each new pole changes the shape of the structure. It stops being a tripod and becomes a cone. But not an even cone. This is what astonishes me. A teepee is not symmetrical. The back wall, the one facing the wind, is steeper. The front, with the entrance, is more gradual. This creates a backward tilt to the entire structure, as if someone took a perfect cone and leaned it slightly into the wind. Why? Shaitan explains. The steep back wall deflects the wind upward. The gradual front gives more living space inside, where people sit and sleep. And the backward lean makes the structure stable, like a boxer standing slightly back on his heels, ready to take a punch. I look at this skeleton of 15 poles and see a frame. Shaitan looks and sees a home. The difference between us is like the difference between someone who sees notes on paper and someone who hears music. Now the hides. Shaitan unfurls the covering. It is enormous. 30 bison hides sewn together into a single semicircle. The seams are stitched with sinew. Every seam is double. Every stitch is the length of my fingernail. I try to imagine how many hours went into this work. Shaitan says his wife and 2 sisters sewed this covering for 4 months. 4 months of daily work, stitch by stitch. I recall how last summer, I spent 2 days assembling a cabinet from a store and considered it a feat. The hides are processed. That is a separate science. First, the hide is stretched on a frame and scraped, removing meat and fat. Then it is soaked in a solution made from the brain of the same bison. Yes, bison brain is a natural tanning agent. Every animal, Shaitan says, is born with enough brain to tan its own hide. I say nothing, because I do not know how to respond to such perfect symmetry of nature. After brain tanning, the hide is worked soft, for hours, by hands, by feet, by special wooden tools. Then it is smoked over a fire. The smoke seals the pores and makes the hide waterproof. The finished hide is soft as suede but tough as canvas. I touch it. It is warm even to the touch, as if the bison were still breathing somewhere inside this material. The covering is raised onto the frame with the help of the last 16th pole. It is called the lifting pole. The covering is tied to it near the top and raised from the backside of the teepee. Then it is unfurled around the frame, like wrapping a gift. 2 wings of the covering meet at the front, above the entrance, and are fastened with wooden pins. It looks like an enormous jacket being buttoned up. At the top, an opening remains, the smoke hole. This is not simply a hole, it is an adjustable ventilation system. On either side of the opening protrude 2 flaps, 2 wings of hide. Each flap is controlled by a separate pole from outside. By turning these poles, you can open and close the flaps, direct them with the wind or against it. It is like a damper in a stove, only the size of a door. The wind changes direction. You step outside and turn the pole. The flap swivels. The smoke continues to rise straight up. Not a single spark flies onto the hides. Not a single gust of wind drives smoke back inside. I stand and look at this system, and there is one word in my head. Brilliant. Absolutely, incomprehensibly brilliant. Shaitan has finished with the covering. The teepee stands. A cone of hides and wood, about 4.5 meters tall, about 5 meters in diameter at the base. From outside, it looks simple, almost primitive. But I already know that behind this simplicity stands such a quantity of knowledge and calculation that it would suffice for an engineering degree. The wind picks up. I feel the frost creeping through 3 layers of my clothing. My fingers in $40 gloves are numb. On Shaitan's hands are simple deerskin mittens lined with rabbit fur. He worked with bare hands when he tied the knots. He never once winced. But the teepee is not yet finished. On the outside, it is complete. Inside, everything is just beginning. Shaitan lifts the entrance flap and gestures me in. I duck and enter. And stop. Inside is another world.
Seriously. Outside, the wind howls, and it is -30. Inside, silence.
Not total silence. You can hear the wind flowing around the cone, but it is no longer a howl. It is a soft hum, as if someone turned on white noise at the lowest volume. And the light inside a teepee is astonishing. The hides let through a soft, diffused glow. Not dark, not bright. A warm half-light in which you can see everything, but your eyes rest. Like a room with perfectly chosen lighting, only the designer was the step. Dakota is already inside. He is laying out bedding of bison hides, fur side up around the perimeter. The floor of the teepee is packed earth, but right now it is frozen solid. The hides insulate from the cold below. I sit down on a hide and feel the fur spring beneath me. Warmth. Real, living warmth. Bison fur is not just fur. It is an engineering marvel of nature. Every hair is hollow inside. The air inside the hair is the best thermal insulator that exists. A bison survives at -50. Its fur was made for this. But the main secret of the teepee is not the covering and not the poles. The main secret hangs right now before me. The inner lining, the liner. A strip of tanned hides that attaches to the poles on the inside, around the entire perimeter. It is about 1.5 meters high, from the ground to the shoulder level of a seated person. Between the outer covering and the liner remains an air gap, 10-15 centimeters of air. This is a double-pane window. I am not joking. The principle is absolutely the same. 2 layers of material with an air pocket between them. Modern windows work exactly the same way. Only here it was invented by people who had never heard the word thermal insulation. But the liner does something else as well. It creates a draft. Cold air from outside flows in under the lower edge of the teepee covering, rises in the gap between the covering and the liner, is heated by the warmth of the hearth, and exits through the smoke hole at the top. This is a constant airflow that ventilates the teepee without cooling it. Smoke from the hearth goes up, fresh air enters from below, and warm air stays inside, held in by the liner. I sit and try to process this. A double-wall system with an air gap, natural ventilation with heat recovery, an adjustable exhaust at the top. This is not a primitive dwelling. This is a climate machine assembled from hides and sticks. Shaitan builds a fire in the center of the teepee, a small hearth ringed with stones. The firewood is dry, prepared in advance. The fire catches quickly. Smoke rises in a steady column to the smoke hole and exits. Not a single wisp drifts sideways. The draft works perfectly. After 10 minutes, I take off my jacket. After 20, my sweater. Inside the teepee, it is +20. Outside, it is -30. A difference of 50 degrees. Between me and lethal cold, a layer of bison hide the thickness of a finger and a little air. Dakota sets a kettle of water on the stones by the hearth. Soon, there will be tea. I watch the fire, listen to the wind beyond the walls, and think about the fact that my city house with central heating, plastic windows, and 3 layers of insulation does exactly the same thing. Only worse. Because my house cannot be assembled in 2 hours, cannot be moved to a new location, and cannot be repaired with what you find in the forest. Shaitan sits down across from me, the fire between us. His face in the warm light looks younger. He begins to speak. Not for me, for Dakota. He tells how his grandfather set up a teepee, how he chose a spot by the river where willows sheltered from the north wind, how his grandmother knew by the smell of a hide whether it was ready for the covering or needed more smoking. Dakota listens in silence. His eyes reflect the fire. I am silent too. There are moments when the best thing a stranger can do is simply not interfere. The kettle bubbles. Steam rises to the smoke hole and mingles with the smoke. Shaitan drops a bundle of dried herbs into the water. The smell is bitter, earthy, with a note of something piney. He calls it winter tea. I take a sip. Hot. Bitter. Then, a second later, a sweetish aftertaste that lingers on the tongue. Night comes early. By 4 in the afternoon, it is already dark. But inside the teepee, darkness does not fall. The fire transforms the space into a warm cocoon of orange light. The shadows of the poles radiate from the center to the walls like the spokes of a wheel. The hides of the covering glow from within, and the teepee from outside, I peek out, looks like a giant lantern set in the middle of a boundless white field. Shaitan shows me how daily life is organized. Everything in a teepee has its place. This is not a figure of speech. Literally every object belongs to a specific point in the space. Sleeping places along the walls, on both sides of the entrance. The owner's place opposite the entrance, in the back. Food to the right of the entrance. Weapons and tools to the left. Firewood right by the entrance, so it need not be carried across the entire dwelling. This is a one-room apartment 5 meters in diameter in which a family of 6 to 8 people lives. And no one gets in anyone's way. Because everyone knows where their place is, where their things are, where to step and where not to step. Between the hearth and the owner's sleeping place stands a small altar, a bison skull, bundles of herbs, several feathers. Shaitan does not explain. I do not ask. There are things that are not for my questions. Takoda lays out the sleeping hides. 2 layers. The bottom one fur side up, the top one fur side down. Between them, a person, like in an envelope. I lie down to try it. The fur embraces from all sides. The warmth is instant and complete. I understand why they never invented beds. Why would you need a bed when you have a bison hide on the ground? And it is better than any mattress. During the night, the temperature drops to -35. I know this because my phone, the only modern object I brought with me, shows the temperature. It, by the way, died in 3 hours. Cold kills lithium batteries. The teepee has stood for 1,000 years. My phone did not last the evening. Shaitan wakes twice during the night to add firewood. He does it soundlessly. I wake not from his movements, but from the change in sound. When the fire dies down, the silence grows thicker. When he adds a log, there is a quiet crackle, and the silence retreats. This is a rhythm. The rhythm of night in a teepee. Fire, silence, rustle, fire. Morning. I open my eyes. Through the smoke hole I can see the sky. It is pink. Dawn on the Great Plains is when the whole world turns pink for 10 minutes and then abruptly white. I crawl out of the hides. Inside the teepee it is cool. The fire has nearly gone out, maybe +5. But after a night in a fur cocoon, it feels like freshness rather than cold. Shaitan is already outside. I hear him splitting wood, measured, precise strikes, like a metronome. I step out. The frost hits my face like a palm. -32. The sky is clear. The sun is low, orange, barely warming, but blinding. The snow sparkles so brightly it hurts to look. Shaitan splits wood without a hat. His hair is covered in frost. He nods to me. Good morning. Today, Shaitan wants to show me how a teepee moves, because a teepee is not a stationary house. It is a mobile dwelling, a nomadic home, and its entire construction is subordinated to one idea: assemble, transport, set up, again and again, a whole lifetime. The Lakota, Shaitan's people, followed the bison. The herds moved, the people moved after them. Every few weeks, sometimes more often, the camp was struck and relocated. Dozens of teepees were disassembled in a couple of hours, loaded onto travois, and carried to a new place. Travois. I see one for the first time. It is 2 long poles crossed over a horse's back, with a platform of hides between them. The teepee poles became the poles of the travois. The teepee covering was folded and laid on the platform. The house turned into transport. The transport turned into a house. No superfluous parts. Every element performs a double function. It is as if the walls of your apartment folded into a car. I try to imagine a modern equivalent and cannot. The closest thing that comes to mind is a recreational vehicle. But a recreational vehicle weighs 3 tons, guzzles gasoline, and breaks down every 6 months. A travois is pulled by 1 horse, repaired with a stick and a rope, and lasts as long as the poles last. Shaitan takes down the teepee. I help. More precisely, I try to help. My frozen fingers cannot manage the wooden pins. Dakota gently moves me aside and removes them in 30 seconds. The covering comes off in one motion, like a cloak from shoulders. The poles are laid on the ground. In 40 minutes, all that remains where the teepee stood is a circle of trampled snow and a scorch mark from the fire. 40 minutes. A full-fledged home in which we slept, ate, warmed ourselves, laughed. Gone in 40 minutes. I recall how my neighbors moved out of their apartment. 3 days, a truck, 4 movers, and a broken wardrobe. Shaitan does not set the teepee up again. Not today. Instead, he leads me to another teepee standing half a kilometer away. His sister Winosha lives there with her family. This teepee has been standing for 3 weeks now. It is lived in, and the difference is immediately visible. Around Winosha's teepee is a packed-down area. Paths to the river, to the firewood, to the neighbors. By the entrance is a wooden frame for drying meat. On the frame are long strips of bison meat, dark red, frozen through. This is pemmican in the making. The meat dries in the frost, then will be ground into powder and mixed with fat and berries. Food that keeps for years. An energy bar invented a couple of thousand years ahead of schedule. Winosha comes out to meet us. She is about 45, strong hands, calm face. She smiles at Shaitan, nods to me. She wears a dress of deerskin, over it a wrap of bison hide with the fur turned inward. On her feet are moccasins with high tops, insulated with fur. She looks as though the frost is a minor inconvenience, something like a light drizzle. Inside her teepee, everything is different. The same principles, but a different life. On the walls, on the liner, there are paintings. Geometric patterns done in natural pigments. Red from ochre, black from charcoal, yellow from clay, blue from berries. Each pattern means something, but Winosha does not explain, and I do not press. She has 2 children, a boy of about 10 and the girl of about 7. The boy sits by the hearth sharpening a small knife on a stone. His movements are careful, but confident. He is 10, and he handles a knife better than I at my age handle a butter knife. The girl helps her mother. She is softening a strip of sinew, grinding it between stones. From this sinew will come thread. Thread that stitches hides together, that repairs the teepee covering, that mends moccasins. Every child here is an apprentice. Every day is a lesson. There is no school, no textbooks. There are the hands of elders that demonstrate and the hands of the young that repeat. Winosha shows me a hide she is processing. It is deer. The hide is stretched on a frame behind the teepee. Winosha scrapes it with a bone scraper. The movements are rhythmic, powerful. Shavings of fat and membrane fall onto the snow. The smell is sharp, animal, but not repulsive. The smell of work. She says this hide will become new moccasins for the children. By spring, their feet will have grown. The old moccasins will be too small. New ones are needed. From one deer skin, you get 2 pairs of children's moccasins, or 1 pair of adult ones, plus mittens, plus scraps for patches. Nothing is thrown away. This is not a slogan. It is physical reality. When the nearest store is a herd of bison 100 kilometers away, you throw away nothing. Bones become tools, scrapers, needles, points. Horns become spoons and ladles. Fat goes to candles, to hide processing, to cooking. Sinew becomes thread and bowstrings. Hooves are boiled down for glue. The stomach becomes a water vessel. The bladder, a storage bag. I listen and count. From one bison, the Lakota obtained food, clothing, shelter, tools, utensils, thread, glue, fuel. From one animal. We in the modern world kill a cow and take the meat. The rest is waste. Which of us is more primitive? Evening.
We are back in Shatan's teepee. He set it up again in a new spot, closer to the river.
Set it up in an hour and a half, with Dakota's help and my useless fussing. The fire burns. The wind outside has picked up. I hear it howling on different notes as it flows around the cone. The teepee sways slightly. The poles creak. But inside it is warm and dry. The covering is stretched taut as a drum. Not a single snowflake penetrates inside. Shatan tells stories. He speaks of winter camps, of how dozens of teepees stood in a circle, entrances facing the center. In the center, a large teepee for gatherings. Around the camp, corrals for horses. Smoke rose from every teepee, and from above the camp looked like a circle of small volcanoes. He speaks of winter nights, when the elders told stories. Only in winter. Some stories cannot be told in summer. That is the rule. Winter stories for winter nights, when the snow lies and the world sleeps. He speaks of how women were the mistresses of the teepee. The teepee belonged to the woman. She built it. She owned it. She decided when to set it up and when to take it down. A man could be a great warrior and hunter, but the home was not his. The home was hers. Dakota listens. I listen. The fire crackles. Beyond the walls of buffalo hides, -30 and a wind that could kill a person in 2 hours. But here, in the circle of warm light, time flows differently. More slowly, more thickly, like honey. I think about what I have seen over these 2 days. 15 poles, 30 hides, sinew rope, fire. And from this, a home. A real home, where it is warm, dry, bright. Where there is a place for everyone and everything, which can be assembled in 2 hours and taken apart in 40 minutes. Which stands through any storm. Which breathes, ventilates, regulates. Which leaves no trace when you leave. We build houses from concrete, steel, and plastic. They stand in one place and slowly crumble. We pay for heating, for ventilation, for repairs. We depend on electricity, on gas, on plumbing. Cut all of that off, and our houses become concrete boxes where it is cold, dark, and there is nothing to breathe. A teepee depends on nothing but the earth beneath it and the sky above it. It is a home you carry with you. A home that breathes together with you. A home that after you will become the earth from which grass will grow, which a buffalo will eat, from whose hide someone will sew a new teepee. The circle closes. It always closes. Shatan adds the last log. Sparks fly upward, toward the stars visible through the smoke hole. Dakota is already asleep. Silence. Only the wind, only the fire, only breathing. I pull the buffalo hide up to my chin. The fur tickles my cheek. Warm, secure, simple. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Here we tell about people who know what we have forgotten. And leave a comment. Tell me what surprised you the most. I am truly curious. Good night. From a teepee at -30. It is warmer here than you think.